I'm Dustin Saldarriaga, an immigration lawyer with Scott Legal PC in New York City. In this video, I'll be discussing a question we get a lot about the TN visa. Can you move from a TN visa to a green card? First, a bit of background on the TN visa. The TN visa can be an excellent option for nationals of Canada or Mexico who want to work in the United States. The application process is relatively simple and fast, especially for nationals of Canada who can apply for a TN at a port of entry. To qualify, you must have an offer of employment from a U.S. employer to work in a listed profession, and you must be qualified to work in that profession. With a TN visa, you can stay in the U.S. for up to 3 years at a time, and there's no limit to the number of times you can renew it. We've posted a number of great videos on the TN visa to our YouTube channel, so be sure to check those out. So, can someone who has a TN visa apply for a green card? The short answer is yes. The longer answer, though, is that in order to move from a TN visa to a green card, there are a number of issues that you'll need to navigate. In this video, I'll walk you through a few of the possible pathways from a TN visa to a green card. Since this is a complicated area of immigration law, we strongly recommend that anyone navigating this process work with a qualified immigration lawyer. Pathway 1. Apply for a green card while you're in TN status. A TN visa holder can apply for a green card in the same way that any other foreign national can, by being sponsored by a family member who would file a USCIS Form I-130, or by being sponsored by an employer who would file a USCIS Form I-140. Once that application is approved, the applicant would file a USCIS Form I-485 application to adjust status. Once this form is approved, the available green card can be issued. The TN visa holder is not given any particular advantage by virtue of being on a TN visa. This means, in other words, that the TN visa does not automatically lead to a green card. But let's say that you do qualify to apply for a green card while you're in the US on a TN visa. For example, if your employer decides to sponsor you for a green card. If you apply for a green card while in the US on a TN visa, there are a number of pitfalls to be aware of. The first is the issue of non-immigrant intent. The TN visa is a temporary visa, which means that someone entering the US on a TN visa must intend to leave the US before their status expires. At the time they're entering the US, they cannot intend to adjust status during that visit. To quickly clarify, when I say to adjust status, it means to apply for a green card from within the US. There are a few non-immigrant visas that do allow dual intent, meaning that the visa holder can intend at the time of entry to adjust status and apply for a green card. Dual intent visas include the L visa and the H-1B visa. The TN visa, unfortunately, is not a dual intent visa. On the other hand, the question of intent applies to the immediate visit. The government does not expect you to disclose or even to know whether you might someday apply for a green card. Instead, they're asking whether you intend to apply for a green card during the immediate visit for which you're seeking entry. So what if the TN visa holder at the time they entered the US didn't plan to apply to adjust status, but once they entered the US and started working, an opportunity came up? Let's say that their TN employer decided to sponsor them for a green card. Does this violate the terms of their TN visa? Not necessarily. Remember that it's the visa holder's intent at the time they entered the US that matters. In other words, there's no prohibition on changing your mind. That being said, it's essential that you be honest when speaking with the government. Also, applying to adjust your status within 3 months of entering the US can be used as evidence to show that you misrepresented your intentions at the port of entry, and this could have significant consequences. In summary, if a TN visa holder honestly represents at the time of entry that they do not intend to adjust status during the immediate visit, and if they then decide to pursue a green card at least a few months after they enter, there's no prohibition on adjusting status while in the US on a TN visa. We've been talking about the visa holder's intent at the time they enter the US, but what about their intent when they apply to extend their TN status from within the US or to renew their TN visa? TN visa holders must have non-immigrant intent, meaning they must intend to leave the United States at the end of their stay in the US, and they must intend not to adjust status, both at the time they enter the US and at any point at which they apply to renew their TN visa or extend their TN status. Since filing an application to adjust status clearly shows that the applicant plans to adjust status and permanently remain in the US, a TN visa holder risks denial of their TN visa renewal or extension if they previously filed an application to adjust status. This is one reason why in past years it was usually impractical for a TN visa holder to adjust status. In the past, a TN visa was limited to 1 year. This made it difficult for the TN visa holder to enter the US, wait a certain period of time that shows that they did not misrepresent their non-immigrant intent on entry, to apply for a green card, and to receive a decision on the green card application before they were required to renew the visa. Now, though, TN visas are usually issued for 3 years, which makes the process much more feasible. Let's talk a bit about the option of consular processing. In this video, we've been focused on adjusting status, which entails submitting your green card application to USCIS, which then grants the green card. There is another option, which is to apply through a consulate. We call this consular processing. Whether you opt for adjustment of status or consular processing, the first stage of the process requires that the sponsor, whether a family member or an employer, submit an application to USCIS. This is usually the USCIS Form I-130 or Form I-140. Once that application is approved, the applicant who opts for consular processing would not file the USCIS Form I-485 that we mentioned before. Instead, they'd file the Form DS-260 application for an immigrant visa with the consulate. Once the applicant enters the US on the immigrant visa, they'll receive the green card in the mail. In some cases, choosing consular processing could reduce the risk that you'll be denied on the basis of having immigrant intent. After all, if you plan to leave the US in order to receive the immigrant visa at a consulate, how can you possibly plan to remain in the US permanently on the immediate visit? However, the government has been known to ascribe immigrant intent to applicants once the first step of the green card process is initiated and the I-130 or I-140 is filed with USCIS. So that's one pathway you can follow if you're in the US on a TN visa and want to apply for a green card while in TN status. Let's take a look at a second pathway in which you first change status to a dual intent visa and apply for the green card from there. As I mentioned before, the issues of non-immigrant intent that apply to the TN visa do not apply to all visas. Certain visas, like the L1 and the H1B, are dual intent, meaning that they can be issued to someone who does plan to adjust status in the United States. Depending on the circumstances of the job you have while on a TN visa, one of these two dual intent visas could be a good fit. Should you decide to file an application to change status to one of these dual intent statuses, you would, after being approved, be able to remain in the US to file an application to adjust status, and while the application to adjust status is pending, to renew your L1 or your H1B status. Although this second pathway does add the additional step of applying to change your status from TN to a dual intent status, it allows you to avoid the pitfall of immigrant intent each time you apply to renew your TN status once the adjustment of status application is filed. In conclusion, regardless of which pathway a TN visa holder chooses in pursuit of a green card, issues of non-immigrant intent and timing will be critical to navigate. An immigration lawyer can be particularly helpful for this journey. We hope this video was helpful. If it was, please help us out and click the like and subscribe buttons below to stay updated on future videos about visa options and travel to the US. Thank you for watching.